The search was not finished. It had not been finished for a while, and Marius, who had made himself useful in a beggar camp by listening to everything and forgetting nothing, was still pulling threads from wherever he could find them. One evening, he called Kliff into his tent. He had heard something. A group of Greymane survivors, location known, numbers uncertain. Far enough that the journey was not nothing. But they were out there. That was enough for Kliff. The path to the survivor camp ran through a bandit holdout.
Stop.
Kliff cleared it, with the same precision he brings to every bandit camp that makes the mistake of being between him and something he needs to reach. It did not take long. He found the survivors. Yann had found them first. When they saw Kliff, the bottles went down. They moved to him. These were people who had scattered after the worst night of their lives and had been trying to find a version of peace in the time since. When their leader walked into their camp, they hugged him. One of them said, "Welcome to our little slice of tranquility." Kliff hugged them back, and then he looked at them and asked them in a stern note if this was truly the life they were seeking. Don't they miss their comrades? The survivors defended themselves, and they were not wrong too. They had been through something that does not leave a person easily. They needed the escape. They needed the quiet. The nightmares of the day the black bears came had not stopped just because the day was over. Kliff listened. He did not argue. Then Yann stood up. He said, "Come on. They are all waiting. Let's go." No speech, no extended appeal. Just forward momentum, delivered by the one person in the room who could make it land without it feeling like a lecture. 4 more Greymanes came home. That night, the camp was the fullest it had been. The fires were loud. The celebration was louder. It was the kind of night that a camp like this earns slowly and then spends all at once. Demeniss had also decided to join the celebration. Demeniss was not a Greymane. Marshal Medler introduced Kliff to her when they were setting up the Greymane camp on Marquis's orders. She had come from Demeniss, and some kind of trouble had followed her here, the specifics of which were not fully shared, only the weight of them. The Marquis had asked Medler to bring her to the camp. His reasoning was direct. He could not think of a place safer or more hidden than the Greymane base at Howling Hills. Kliff told her she was their guest. No conditions, no interrogation about what the trouble was or where it had come from. She was brought by the Marquis. She needed shelter, and the camp had room. That was the whole calculation. The morning was what it was going to be after a night like that. The camp was alive, technically. Everyone present, everyone conscious, more or less. The kind of morning where people are hungover. Kliff stepped out of his tent. He looked at the camp. He was about to say something. An explosion in the distance interrupted him. Every Greymane woke up immediately, the kind of sound that cuts straight through a hangover. The explosion had come from the Kilnden Workshop, a hill with steps running around it, a structure at the top that was clearly the source. Smoke still coming off it, a lot of people gathered in front of it, curious to know what happened. At the top were 2 dwarfs. One of them was yelling. He wore a golden helmet, and he had the specific energy of someone who is furious about a situation and has decided that yelling at the nearest person is the appropriate response to it. The other dwarf stood there for a moment, listened, and then walked away. The one in the golden helmet was Grimnir. Kliff asked what had happened. Grimnir told him about the kiln. Not just any kiln, a marvel of ancient craft that had no business existing by the standards of what most artificers could dream of. Big enough to swallow stones the size of trolls. A piece of engineering that had been built by hands that understood things modern hands had forgotten. And it had blown up. There were 4 kilns, each one broken in a different way. The first had a mechanism jammed, something caught where it should not be. Kliff worked it through, smoothed it out. The second had its power cut, the connection severed somewhere in the line. Kliff found it and restored it. The third had been blown to pieces, fragments scattered. Kliff used axiom force to draw the pieces back together. The fourth just needed fuel. Kliff found it and got it running, all 4 running. The Kilnden Workshop, whatever it had been before the explosion, was functional again. Grimnir was delighted. He confirmed everything was working perfectly. He said he was going to make something for Kliff. Something just for him. Kliff camped at the workshop that night. In the morning, Kliff went to Grimnir. He was excited to show Kliff what he had created. He said, "This will blow your mind for sure." It was an iron pot, the Kuku pot. Kliff was unsure of its use. Togrim was the one who explained what it actually did. The Kuku pot, he said, can hold anything, no matter the size, no matter the weight. He told Kliff to try it on the boulder. Kliff tried it on the boulder. The boulder went in, a pot that holds a boulder. Kliff noted it, stored it, and filed it in the category of things that will make sense later. Togrim seemed satisfied that the point had been made. He rode back to Howling Hills. There was a letter from Yann waiting when Kliff got back. The letter said he had found a way to make them a fortune. The bandits were moving valuables on a wagon. He was going to steal it. Kliff should meet him at the Anvil riverbank. Kliff went to the riverbank and waited. Yann arrived with the wagon. He had the manner of a man who has pulled something off and is looking forward to the moment that is confirmed. They brought it to Naira. She checked the wagon. She checked it thoroughly. There was nothing valuable in it. Wrong wagon. Yann had stolen the wrong wagon. Naira was furious. The Greymanes were disappointed. Kliff sold the wagon for whatever it would fetch and did not say anything that needed saying because Naira had already said most of it.
Move it, you lot. Come on. You won't find a better deal in these parts. And whoa. Whoa, steady, steady.
When Kliff got back to camp, Andrew found him. Yann had come by earlier asking for money. He had seemed like he was in some kind of trouble. Then he had left, and no one had seen him since. Kliff was not surprised. The working assumption was that Yann had found a tavern. Then Dwayne came running. Yann was not at a tavern. Yann was a prisoner at the fighting pits. He had gotten drunk. He had wandered into the arena. He had disrupted the tournament finals, the ones with significant money riding on the outcome. And the arena wanted compensation for what his involvement had cost them. Kliff followed Dwayne without a word. The arena owner laid it out. The tournament finals had been ruined. The losses were real. But there was a way to settle it. Kliff would fight 3 matches in the arena, hand to hand. No weapons, no illegal moves. Win all 3 and the debt was paid, and Yann went free. Kliff agreed.
That's the way of it. to the Greymanes.
You should have another go.
Look at you!
I'll return home, brew a hot drink, and take my rest.
You should have another go.
Hold your ground! If you fall back, that'll be our end! Still, we're alive. That's something.
He won all three. The debt was paid. Yann was released. Yann did not think it was his fault. I have stopped being surprised by this. I want to say something here. About Kliff, not Yann. He had just come back from fixing 4 ancient kilns for a dwarf he had never met, sold a worthless stolen wagon for whatever scraps it would fetch, and then fought 3 hand-to-hand matches in an arena to pay for Yann's drunk decision. None of it was his problem. All of it became his problem the moment one of his people was involved. He did not deliberate about this. He did not weigh whether it was worth his time. It simply was what it was. His people, his problem, his feet moving toward it before anyone finished explaining. I knew he was going to do all of it before he did any of it. That is the thing about watching someone long enough. You stop being surprised and start being something else. Proud is too strong a word for a narrator to use, but it is in the vicinity. The next thing Kliff walked into was Naira. She was in Hernand with Dwayne and Andrew, and she was laughing.
I couldn't even do it if I tried.
It was
How
only
does a man
one
hit himself in
time.
the face with his own arrow? Truly an art form.
Not politely, fully, at Dwayne's expense, and had been for what was clearly not the first time that day. The story, as it emerged, was this.
There was an archery contest at Lioncrest Manor yesterday. And Dwayne gave everyone a proper show. He smacked himself with his own arrow. How is that even possible?
That's enough, Naira.
And you botched our last hunt too?
She's been at this all day.
She was going to be describing it for some time. Dwayne had had enough. He was going back to Lioncrest Manor. He was entering the contest again. He was going to win it, and then he was going to find Naira and tell her about it, and that would be the end of the conversation. He asked Kliff to come as a witness. Near the manor, Dwayne asked Kliff for a favor. He wanted Kliff to win the contest for him. I will note, and I say this with full appreciation for the situation, that the plan was for Kliff to win a contest on Dwayne's behalf, so that Dwayne could go back and tell Naira he had won a contest. Kliff agreed.
We can't afford to relax. On my mark.
I'm seething. Utterly revolting.
That was a great game.
He won. Cleanly. Against a worthy opponent who had no idea what they were competing against. Dwayne was immediately satisfied. He walked back toward Naira at speed. Kliff watched him go. After all of it, the survivor camp, the celebration, the kilns, the wrong wagon, the fighting pits, the archery contest, Kliff was walking through Hernand looking for work. That is a sentence I want to let sit for a moment. After an episode like this one, he was walking through the city looking for the next thing to do. A stranger bumped into him on the street, pressed a letter into his hand, disappeared. The letter was from Alustin. Inside the letter, Alustin apologized for the discourteous method the letter was sent. Discretion was necessary. There was a job, something involving the Scholastone Institute. The details were in the letter. This episode was about the Greymane life, the day-to-day of what it looks like when a clan is rebuilding. This letter is something else. The Greymane shenanigans were over. What comes next is serious. Kliff can feel it.